ज्ञानतिमिरन्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरुवे नमः। श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूपा कदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकं। वन्देऽहं वन्दे गुरु श्रीयुतपदकमलं श्रीगुरून् वैष्णवान् श्री राधाकृष्णपदान् श्री राधाकृष्णपदान् सुललिता श्रीविशाखान्वितांश्च नमो विष्णुपादाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमद्भक्तिवेदान्त स्वामिनिधि नाम्ने नमस्ते सरस्वती देवी गौरवाणी प्रशांति निर्विशेषण्यवधिभाषाते सारणे। हे कृष्ण करुणा सिंधु दीनबंधु जगतपते गोपेश गोपीकांत राधा कांत नमस्ते तप्त कांचन गौरंगी राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी कृष्णानुष्वरी स्वामी हरि प्रिय वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्यश्च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। So may I continue, Provit?
Please, bro.
From this, bro.
Yeah.
Adi Keshav reported that the deprogrammers had formed a group called Return to Personal Choice. Prabhat reported they are kidnapping them, torturing them, and forcing them to change their intelligent choice, and they call it personal choice. Maharaj showed Prabhupada a picture of the deprogrammers returning someone to their so-called personal choice, the mother, father, and kidnappers dragging the devotee. They call it rescuing. Srila Prabhupada wondered aloud how such an act of force could be accepted by anyone as a personal choice. Tamal Krishna Maharaj clarified that the US government considered that parents had the right to dictate the choices of their offsprings irrespective of age. The decisive criteria being whether their son or daughter had lost his or her mental capacity. When Prabhupada inquired about the legality of such actions, Adi Keshav explained that American law contained a provision called conservatorship. Anyone who was determined to be of unsound mind or body, or to be addicted or to drugs, or to have been fooled or bewildered by deceptive means, could be put under conservatorship. Someone else could be given charge of the person's affairs, and he or she could be committed to a mental hospital where the deprogramming would take place. New laws were being passed to further reinforce the process. There was already one state law that permitted anyone, not just the parents or the family members, to take this kind of control. Maharaj presented a report that had been prepared by members of the American Civil uh, Liberties Union, ACLU. They had held a huge conference in New York presenting a report on deprogramming personal accounts describing how people had been kidnapped, imprisoned, beaten, tortured, and starved to force them to go back to their old lives. The report mentioned that the deprogrammers had a manual, a do it yourself deprogramming book detailing how to abduct someone and make the person give up his or her newly acquired faith. The ACLU protested that the deprogrammers were doing exactly what they were excusing the devotees of doing. They were excusing the devotees of following their guru blindly, but they were themselves following a guru, Ted Patrick, the deprogramming leader, without discrimination. Patrick was a criminal, an ex-convict who had just recently been re-imprisoned after a new conviction. His followers were continuing his uh, his nefarious activities in his absence. Maharaj said that, unlike the US, Canada had taken a strong position against the deprogrammers and was giving ISKCON farewell media coverage. One devotee from Boston had recently sought political asylum there after being harassed by deprogrammers, and Canadian authorities were refusing to extradite devotees to the US. They had even passed a law in parliament banning deprogrammers from Canada. In New York, Maharaj explained a girl named Murthy Vandya was abducted. The deprogrammers pulled up in a van, dragged her off the street, and drove away. When we filed kidnapping charges, they turned around and filed kidnapping charges against me, saying that we were the kidnappers, even though they had made a statement confessing that they had abducted her bodily off the street, and she said, I have been kidnapped. They said, no, you don't know what you really want. You don't really want to be Hare Krishna. So you are really being kidnapped by the Hare Krishnas. हरे कृष्णा प्रो और कोई कंटिन्यू कर सकते हैं आप कंटिन्यू करिए प्रो तो आपको
Hare Krishna. Ted Patrick and his followers target others beside the devotees, but they admitted that the devotees were the hardest to deprogram. On a TV show with Adi Keshwar Swami and a new devotee, Vasugopal, Patrick turned Vasugopal and said, I could deprogram him very easily, and indeed, Vasugopal would later become a victim of the process. But Patrick then had turned to Adi Keshav and said, but this one is already ruined. I couldn't break him. They believed that once you had been a devotee for 4 or more years, your brain was finished and you could not be deprogrammed. The ACLU report contained a list of all devotees who had been deprogrammed. About two-thirds had returned to the movement more than from any other group. Only brand new devotees had actually left. Devotees who had been in the movement for more than a year or two eventually found their way back. Tamal Krishna Maharaj described how, after being deprogrammed and living in the material world, the person would again meet devotees who would be distributing books out the students. After meeting the devotees, getting a book, and seeing a picture of Krishna, he or she would start to remember his or her life in Krishna consciousness and would again be attracted and return to the temple. This was exactly the case with Vasugopal, who had been deprogrammed but then had come back. Adi Keshav told how Vasugopal had taken a look at the Krishna book and said, take me to the temple. I should be selling the books, not buying them. And he immediately rejoined. Vasugopal had been subjected to terrible abuse by the deprogrammers. His case was described in Patrick's books, Let Our Children Go. One chapter dealt with the Hare Krishna movement and Vasugopal in particular. Patrick openly admitting how terribly he had to torture and abuse him to get him deprogrammed. When he was being held in the house, Keshav related, he managed to get to the phone and call me. So we went there with some of the brahmacharis from the temple and started breaking the windows and banging on the doors. As Vasugopal was trying to come to us, his brothers and relatives grabbed him and threw him against the wall. They locked him in a room and beat him ruthlessly. Ted Patrick wrote his book that there were 25 of us, but actually we were only 5. Finally, they all came out and started to fight with us. They usually have the family members do the fighting, but this Ted Patrick came at me with a straight razor. So far, the court had supported the deprogrammers, claiming that the abuse had been inflicted in the best interest of the victim. Since the government considered the conflict a family dispute, any interference from outside parties, including the devotees whom the person had chosen to join, was deemed inappropriate. Tamal Krishna Maharaj gave the example of an incident in Texas when a father had killed his own son in his sleep but was acquitted of murder. The court had expressed its approval for the father's actions in view of his assumption that his son had gone stray. Typically, devotees' parents and relatives were involved in their abuse from their initial kidnapping right through the torture sessions. If the devotees hits if the devotee hits his parents, Adikeshu continued, they say, just see how crazy he has become. If defending himself against his attackers, Vasugopal had hit his mother and run out, shouting the name of Narsinghdev. but he had been held back by his family members and could not escape. They had locked him in a bathroom for 30 hours, but because he had tried to fight back, they had said, "Just see how crazy he has become. He hit his own mother," and the judge had agreed with him. हरे कृष्णा माशु ब्रो आप पढ़ सकते हैं हरे कृष्ण ब्रो जी धन्यवाद प्रणाम
After hearing all the details, Srila Prabhupada declared that we should not succumb to the pressure, we should fight, prove in open court that we were not brainwashing young devotees, but giving them brains, real intelligence through a perfect understanding of absolute reality and ultimate wisdom. The US government's and court's opposition might seem like a stumbling block, but eventually it would come a step. It would be it would become a stepping stone. As long as we know we were serving Krishna, the all-powerful Supreme Personality of Godhead, we had nothing to fear. At the end of the day, victory was bound to be ours. Everyone in the room nodded with grave determination. I could see that under Srila Prabhupada's command, they were ready to fight. Srila Prabhupada also illuminated everything from the scriptural point of view. He who cannot free his children from the cycle of birth and death is not a father. Gurur nasa savajano nasasyat pita nasasyat janani nasas janani nasasyat daivam natasyan sapatischa sasyan na machoyed ya na mayoyed ya samupeta mrityum. One who cannot deliver his dependents from the paths of repeated birth and death should never become a spiritual master, a relative, father, a husband, a mother, or a worshipable demigod. With the Gaur Purnima festival approaching, devotees were coming to Mayapur from all over the world. 350 had arrived from the US on the first Boeing 747 flight to Calcutta. Srila Prabhupada had expressed concern to Tamal Krishna Maharaj that the fog and overcast skies might pose a danger for the plane's landing. But the weather had cleared up, the airport authorities had extended the runway to make room for the jumbo jet, and the 747 landed without incident. Rameshwar Swami, who was on the flight and had come directly to see Srila Prabhupada, said how wonderful it had been to fly over a plane full of devotees. Hridyananda Goswami and Panchadravida Swami, who had gone to the cockpit and spoken with the pilot, who was, as this was the first 747 flight to Calcutta, the most senior pilot of Air India and the chief of the Indian Pilots Association. He had been extremely receptive, Rameshwar said, and they had preached to him for several hours. Even though the devotees had landed before dawn, a great celebration had greeted them on their arrival. 100 dignitaries from the airline's TV and radio, including the general manager of Air India and his senior officers, had come to welcome him. The press took many pictures and interviewed some of the senior devotees, including Rameshwar Swami, who told them that he did not think Air India alone could bring a plane load of people to West Bengal. It was due to Lord Chaitanya's mercy that people were coming from all over the world. Some of the reporters acknowledged that credit for the trip's success actually belonged to Srila Prabhupada. The arrival of so many devotees from around the world created an uplifting, festive atmosphere. One young brahmachari stood out. He was thin with glasses that made him look intellectual and had a spontaneous, bright smile. He had a humble demeanor, but was also clearly a leader among the devotees. I came to learn that this was Jaya, Jayadvaita, Jayadvaita Dasa, a scholar assigned to edit Srila Prabhupada's book. One day I saw Jayadvaita squatting on the staircase at the edge of the pond, watching the fish in the water. Hare Krishna, he greeted me with his characteristic smile. Did you come here to speak to me? Yes, I replied. I was wondering what you were doing. Trying to study the fish psychology, he said, which made me laugh. They are living in their own world and don't have any idea that I am watching them. Maybe that's how the demigods look at us while we are not aware of them, I suggested. And Krishna is watching the demigods while they are not aware of him, he said. Is that really true? Yes, they are not actually Krishna conscious. Hare Krishna. Abhishek Prabhu, you can read.
Hare Krishna. Brahmanand Swami was serving as Srila Prabhupada's secretary. He was a big, tall man, but had a very soft and tender disposition, and I developed a spontaneous appreciation for him. His brother Gargi Muni Das was also a leading devotee in the movement. Brahmanand, who was elder, had joined in New York, and Gargi Muni had followed him. Srila Prabhupada had appointed both of them as governing body commissioners. While Gargi Muni was serving in India, Brahmanand was involved mainly in Africa. Although the two were brothers, their nature were quite different. Gargamuni was hard as nails. He was such an expert fundraiser that Srila Prabhupada jokingly called him Gargamani. Brahmanan was less money conscious and more inclined toward developing friendly relationships. Before meeting Srila Prabhupada, he had been a remedial reading teacher in New York. But like many other young people during that time, he had been attracted to the American counterculture and planned to go to India. One day, while passing the first Krishna temple at 26 Second Avenue on New York's lowest east side, he had seen a poster announcing Bhagavad Gita classes by A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami. He had wanted to meet Srila Prabhupada, which in those early days was not so difficult. Prabhupada was so Prabhupada was eager to meet young Americans and preach to them. When Brahmanand met Srila Prabhupada, he proudly told him that he had also read the Bhagavad Gita and pulled out a copy from his coat pocket. Prabhupada smiled, as if quite impressed, and asked him to open the book and read aloud. After about a page, Prabhupada asked him to close the book, which he did. Then Prabhupada said, "Now you tell me what you understood." Suddenly, Brahmanand realized that he had not understood anything, and he admitted that to Srila Prabhupada. Prabhupada told him that just reading the book was not enough. One needed a teacher to explain the contents. Just that one encounter with Srila Prabhupada had convinced Brahmanand, and he immediately committed himself to the Swami's mission. 3 days before Gaur Purnima, Brahmanand Maharaj told me that Srila Prabhupada had decided to give me first and second initiation, Harinam and Brahman initiation together. Boy, you are fortunate, he said. I don't think anyone has received such mercy. The news came as both a big surprise and a great delight. Srila Prabhupada generally gave the Hare Krishna Mahamantra as the first initiation, and then after at least a year gave the Gayatri Mantra, second initiation, to deserving candidates. I knew devotees who had been in the movement for many years and still not received second initiation, and I felt deep gratitude towards Srila Prabhupada for bestowing such mercy upon me. I also felt thankful to Brahmanand Maharaj, and when I offered him my obeisances, he embraced me affectionately when I asked what I needed to do to prepare myself for the initiation. He smiled and said, "Just get saved and be ready to receive the mercy." The initiation took place on the morning of Gaur Purnima. More than 100 devotees sat around a sacrificial fire. Srila Prabhupada did not come down to the temple room, but a few sannyasis sat on a dais, called the candidates one by one, and heard our vows to follow the four regulative principles of not eating meat, taking intoxication, indulging in illicit sex, and gambling. We also promised to chant 16 rounds of the Hare Krishna Mahamantra on beats every day. One of the sannyasis, on behalf of Srila Prabhupada, would then give the candidate a string of chanting beats and announce his spiritual name. which Srila Prabhupada had chosen. Each name was met and loud applause and the beating of mridangas. When my turn came, Achyutanand Swami presided over my voice and announced my name, Chir Chor Gopinath Das. The name indicated that I was the servant of Lord Gopinath who stole kheer, condensed milk, for his devotees to Madhavendra Puri. Uh, हरे कृष्णा सौरभ प्रभु आप कंटिन्यू कर सकते हैं.
Okay. The deity of Gopinath was in Remuna, Odisha. Madhavendra Puri, the great devotee, who had unearthed the deity of Gopal in Vrindavan and installed him on the top of Govardhan hill, had been told by Sri Gopal that because the heat of the summer was causing him great discomfort, he wanted Madhavendra to get some sandalwood and camphor and applied them to his body to keep him cool. Madhavendra Puri went to Odisha and began and begged those valuable articles from the king. On the way, he stopped at Remuna to have darshana of Gopinath. In the temple, Madhavendra Puri recalled that kheer, the sheer, the temple priest offered to Gopinath was famous for its flavor, and he considered that if he could taste it, he would be able to prepare it for his Gopal as well. Right after the thought flashed across his mind, however, he realized that he had desired to taste the kheer even before it had been offered to Lord Gopinath. He felt extremely guilty and he left the temple and retired for the night in a deserted village marketplace nearby. When Gopinath's Pujari took rest that night, he had a dream that Gopinath was telling him to go to the marketplace and give Madhavendra Puri some kheer. The Pujari told Gopinath that the kheer had already been distributed, but Gopinath said that he had kept aside a pot of kheer underneath his dhoti. So the Pujari bathed and went to the temple, and there, to his utter amazement, he found the pot of kheer behind Gopinath's dhoti. From then on, Gopinath of Remuna was known as Kheer Chor Gopinath. I was very happy to have the name. It sounded like celestial music to my ears, and I was filled with gratitude that Srila Prabhupada had so mercifully made me a servant of Sri Sri Kheer Chor Gopinath. During the fire sacrifices, I was offering grains to the fire and chanting Swaha, Swaha. I felt that I was offering Krishna everything I possessed. But then it occurred to me that I did not really possess anything. All that was worthwhile to offer was myself. So that was what I offered. Srila Prabhupada's voice echoed in my head. For many, many lifetimes you are trying to enjoy, but you can see that you are still not satisfied. Just offer this life to Krishna. After initiation, I had to attend to Srila Prabhupada, so I did not have a chance to go out and collect Guru Dakshina, the monetary gift for one's Guru after initiation. In the evening, when the newly initiated devotees came to his room and each offered his Guru Dakshina, I regretted that I had not collected anything for him. When everyone left, I was alone with Prabhupada, my heart filled with remorse. Srila Prabhupada, I said to him, you gave me Diksha, but I did not offer you any Guru Dakshina. You offered yourself, that is the best Guru Dakshina, he assured me. I offered my obeisances and said, Srila Prabhupada, I am offering myself to you completely. Please accept me and utilize me in whatever way you want. Okay, Ronak Prabhu, you can continue.
हरे कृष्णा. सारे पढ़ लिए हैं. ओके, शुभम प्रभु आप फिर से शुरू करिए. सारे पढ़ चुके हैं एक बार.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. One morning, after I had taken dictation from Srila Prabhupada had him sign the complete letters, he told me, I am appointing you as my secretary for Indian affairs. I was surprised, to say the least. I had been told that Prabhupada appointed only his most intimate and efficient associates as his secretaries. But I was just a new devotee and he was giving me the most important assignment in his service. I felt both incredible joy and overwhelming gratitude. Cyril Prabhupada called Kamal Krishna Maharaj told him about the new appointment and suggested that I move into the I move into the secretary's room where Maharaj was staying. Tamal Krishna put an affectionate hand on my shoulder, said, "Yes, Sril Prabhupada," and took me to the room two doors down. The room next to Prabhupada's was to have been his secretary's room, but the typewriter had made too much noise. So Prabhupada had suggested that his servant move in and his secretary take the room next door. There were two beds. Maharaj said I could use the one at the far end of the room and told me to fetch my belongings. When I informed my dear friend and roommate Tirthpad, he was at first silent. Then he told me that he had always felt that I was very special, and he embraced me and thanked me for my association as his roommate. I could see that he was feeling bad, and I knew that I too would miss our time together. It was quite an experience to be so close to Tamal Krishna Maharaj. Although we were sharing a room, I still held him in great reverence. I still held him in great reverence. In fact, he commanded this kind of respect from practically everyone in ISKCON, but he treated me with warmth and affection. I would bow down to him and he would embrace me. He had been my hero even before I had met him. And this closeness was like a dream, one that I had never imagined would come true. Maharaj got up very early each morning, but he refrained from switching on the light so as not to disturb me. When he was in the bathroom, however, he would play tapes of Sril Prabhupada's lectures, and that would inevitably wakes me up. I would just lie in bed listening to Prabhupada's transcendental voice until Maharaj was done, at which time I would rise and get ready for the day. Maharaj was extremely regulated and organized, waking up waking up every day at 3 a.m., bathing, and then chanting his rounds. He would finish all his rounds and be ready to serve Srila Prabhupada by dawn. He organized me also, insisting that I have a specific time for translating, replying to Prabhupada's letters, and attending to his divine grace by just being around him in case he needed anything, making sure that I always had enough time to work on translating Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita into Bengali. Rooming with Maharaj was one of my most memorable experiences in ISKCON. He always treated me lovingly and he trained me expertly to serve Srila Prabhupada at the highest standard I could manage. In his presence, I was constantly learning new and important things about Krishna consciousness and serving Srila Prabhupada. Because of his seniority, I wanted to serve him too, but he always refused. Whenever I tried to serve him prasad, he would insist on me taking prasad with him. If a devotee serving him made a mistake, he would get upset and chastise him, but he never chastised me. कृष्ण prove आप पढ़ सकते हैं you wanna prove
When I related my experience to Bhavanand Maharaj, he commented with a smile, "You're fortunate. Tamal is known for his temper. That's why he is called Hot Tamal. Anyway, I can see that he has accepted you as his man. What that is Tamal. When he likes somebody, he'll do anything for him. And you are one of those fortunate souls who has won his favor." I was delighted to hear and this and told him, "You are also one of those fortunate souls. I noticed that what a deep friendship you have with him." Maharaj smiled and said, "Yes, that's true. We developed a deep friendship from the first time we met." He's a real person with a golden heart. That's why Srila Prabhupada loves him so much. Later, Tamal Krishna Maharaj told me that he had grown up in Harlem, a rough neighborhood in New York City, where he had often had to confront the local gangs, and that his upbringings had forced him to become tough. But I also saw how tender and loving a person he was, and the way he served Srila Prabhupada was an incredible example. I could see how much confidence Prabhupada had in him and how much he depended upon him. Harish Shori Prabhu had also come from a rough environment. A first impression of him was that he was somewhat reserved and not so friendly. Although he used to see each other frequently, I did not try to communicate with him beyond cordial smiles. Eventually, however, I came to see that he was just fixing his service to Prabhupada and did not speak much unless there was a need, and I became more involved in serving Prabhupada. We started to communicate more freely. Around that time, the Sannyasi GBC of Australia was having difficulties and left the movement. There was a need for someone to take up the responsibility, and I was told that Srila Prabhupada was considering appointing Hari Sori. If he did, someone would have to take over his position as Prabhupada's personal servant. Hari Sori suggested that it might be me, but I was waiting for Srila Prabhupada to make the decision. I also knew that one of his personal servants' most important service was to massage him, and I was not good at that, and it needed one strong like Hari Sori. One morning, Hari Sori asked me if I knew how to cook. Not thinking much about it, I replied that yes, I did. The next thing I knew, he had reported my ability to Shira Prabhupada, and soon afterwards, he told me that Prabhupada wanted me to cook for him. But although I had told Hari Sori that I knew how to cook, I did not think I was really good enough to cook for Prabhupada. When I was in Germany, I had cooked once in a while, but I knew that one had to be an expert, which I was not. I was struck, totally perplexed. I did not know what to do. Then I had an idea. Srila Prabhupada's sister Pisima was there, and I had heard that she was one of the best cooks in the world and she loved to cook for her brother. So I went to Pisima and told her the situation. She assured me that I should not worry and straight away went to the kitchen and started to cook. I just stood there watching. She did not let me touch a single thing. When it was time to serve, she prepared the plate and it looked really gorgeous with many expertly cooked preparations. I happily took it to Srila Prabhupada. Prabhupada took one look on the plate and asked me who had cooked. From the tone of his voice, I could tell that he was not happy. Pisima Srila Prabhupada, I replied. Did I ask you to cook or Pisima to cook? He asked. Then he told me to take the plate away. Trembling with fear and laden with guilt, I appealed to him, please Srila Prabhupada, I made a mistake, I'll never do it again. And I just stood there, wanting nothing else than to fall at his feet and beg for forgiveness. Though I did not dare, he eventually became pacified, but I had lost a golden opportunity. Still, I continued to serve Prabhupada, and he was pleased with how I was replying to his letters. I was translating every day and reading the translations aloud to him, and he would make any corrections. The cooking incident, however, still weighed on my mind. I had come so close to getting at that wonderful opportunity, but had missed it due to my immaturity. I resolved that I would learn to cook so that if the opportunity ever again presented itself, I would not fail. Hare Krishna, Himanshu, आप पढ़ सकते हैं
One evening, I was in Srila Prabhupada's quarter chanting while he was in his bedroom. I was chanting quite loudly as if Srila Prabhupada would be pleased to hear me. After a while, however, he called me and told, don't chant so loudly. I felt guilty and embarrassed, and from then on, whenever I was near Srila Prabhupada, I would chant very, very softly. A few days later, sitting alone in front of Srila Prabhupada while he was leaning on his bolster, chanting on his bead, I asked, Srila Prabhupada, can I learn Sanskrit? He sat up straight and asked, why do you want to learn Sanskrit? I thought for a moment and said, in order to understand the scriptures properly, to get closer to Vedic culture. And Prabhupada cut me short. There is no use, he said. Our business is not to become a Pandita. Our business is to become a devotee. Our business is to serve Krishna. There are so many Sanskrit scholars. But what are they doing? Are they promoting Vedic culture and wisdom of the Vedas? No, they are not doing anything useful. What is really needed is to preach Krishna consciousness. And to do that, you don't need to learn Sanskrit. You don't need to learn anything besides who Krishna is and what is your relationship with him. Then he added, just read my books and you will learn Sanskrit. Srila Prabhupada's health had been bad for months since he had returned to India, and now it was deteriorating rapidly. He stopped going out of his he stopped going out for his usual morning walks, and he needed help just going to the toilet. In Mayapur, his quarters did not have an attached bath. It was at the end of the block of rooms. Even using his cane, he needed whoever was attending him to support him by reaching around his waist with one hand and holding his left shoulder with the other. But although his health was bad, he did not want to take any treatment. He did not like allopathic medicines, and he felt that Ayurvedic medicine did not work because the herbs had lost their potency and the doctors were quacks. Still, when Abhiram Prabhu arranged for a famous Ayurvedic doctor, Dr. Vimalananda Tarkatirtha, to come to Mayapur to treat him, he agreed. Dr. Tarkatirtha was an old man, perhaps in his late 80s and semi-blind. Although the doctor had brought his servant with him, Srila Prabhupada wanted me to take care of him as well. Tarkatirtha, he told me, had been a great Ayurvedic doctor in his time, maybe the best in Calcutta, but had entered into politics and become a member of West Bengal Legislative Assembly, effectively ending his career. Dr. Tarkatirtha was pleasant but somewhat reserved. From his appearance and composure, one could tell that he had come from an aristocratic background. I brought him to Srila Prabhupada's room every morning and evening, and he would examine. Srila Prabhupada intently feel his pulse and then prescribe medicine. It was hard to tell how seriously Srila Prabhupada took Dr. Tarkatirtha or his treatment, but two but the two had long, intimate talks. Dr. Tarkatirtha was a few years older than Prabhupada, but they were from the same city and had known each other when they were younger. I could see how they were enjoying each other's association. One evening after his treatment, Srila Prabhupada was speaking to Dr. Tarkatirtha about the condition of Kali Yuga or current age, how everything would deteriorate, and he asked me to get the 12th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam from his desk. The 12th canto had not yet been translated, so Prabhupada wanted me to get the Sanskrit version. When I fetched it, he asked me to turn to the second chapter and read aloud. So I started to read the Sanskrit verses, and he gave the translation and affirmed the accuracy of the statements. How, in the age of Kali, the relationship between men and women would be based solely on sex. Families would be reduced to just the husband and wife, and no one would take care of their elder family members. Married sons would leave their parents and move away, and even the relationship between husband and wife would last only for a short while. Marriages would be based on sexual compatibility and sealed with only verbal agreements. There would be rampant promiscuity and no spousal loyalty. A man's appearance would be judged by the length of his hair. He pointed out how in America and Europe young men were growing their hair long and how had become the deciding factor for their physical attractiveness. Prabhupada described how robbers would become rulers. They would extract money from their subjects through taxes, and the people would become so disillusioned that they would run away from the cities and the villages to escape the exploitation. The condition of the earth would become so precarious that the cows would stop giving milk, grain bearing plants would become like plain grass, and fruits would have no pulp. After Dr. Tarkatirtha left, Srila Prabhupada asked me where I had learned Sanskrit. Remembering the incident when I had asked him whether I could learn it, I understood that he was assuring me that I could just by reading his books. Hare Krishna. Abhishek Prabhu, you can read.
हरे कृष्णा अभिषेक प्रभु आप पढ़ सकते हैं ठीक है सॉल्व को आप पढ़ लीजिए शायद उनका नेटवर्क इशू होगा
Hare Krishna.
हरे कृष्णा प्लीज
One evening, after Dr. Tarkatirtha had checked Srila Prabhupada and they were sitting together. Prabhupada started to speak about his life. He told the doctor how his friend Naren Malik had come one day and invited him to go see a sadhu. Srila Prabhupada had not had much respect for the so called sadhus because he had seen how his father had invited them into his house. But they would come in just to eat and collect a donation. So he declined. Naren, however, had been insistent that Srila Prabhupada should go with him, telling him that this sadhu was not that kind of sadhu. He was high class and learned. Eventually, Prabhupada had relented and agreed to. The sadhu, he told Dr. Tarkatirtha, had ended up being Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, Prabhupada's spiritual master. And at their very first meeting, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta had instructed him to take up the mission of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to spread Krishna consciousness in English all over the world. Srila Prabhupada had initially tried to resist Srila Bhaktisiddhanta's instruction. First, India had to become independent, he had objected. Until then, no one would take her message seriously. In response, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta had told him that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's teachings were far beyond political, social, geographical, or even religious considerations. They were from another world, not dependent on any condition of material nature. Afterwards, when Naren had asked him for his opinion of the sadhu, Srila Prabhupada had replied, now that the responsibility of spreading Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's message has come to such a person, he is bound to do something about it. Just from that first meeting, Prabhupada had been so impressed with Srila Bhaktisiddhanta that he had decided to accept him as a spiritual master and take up that instruction as his life's mission. Srila Prabhupada had been the manager of a pharmaceutical company, Dr. Bose's Laboratories, owned by Dr. Karthik Bose, and the very next day he had gone to the office and submitted his resignation. Dr. Bose had been shocked. He was a family friend and had treated Prabhupada with affection. He could not understand why all of a sudden Prabhupada was submitting his resignation. When Prabhupada had explained about his meeting with and instruction from Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur and his decision to commit himself to that mission, Dr. Bose had tried to reason with him that he could serve the mission even while employed by the company. But Prabhupada had replied that if he were to remain a company employee, all this time would be consumed by his occupational duties. Dr. Bose had countered that Prabhupada was not just an employee. He was managing the company and was just like a family member, like a son. But Prabhupada had been adamant. So what are you going to do if you resign from your job? Dr. Bose had asked. You have a family to maintain. You are married and you have a son. You have an elderly father. Prabhupada had told him that he would run his own business. That way he could maintain his family but also have enough time to preach Krishna consciousness. When Dr. Bose had heard that, he said, okay, then you take up the agency for my products for North India. That is how Srila Prabhupada had gone to Allahabad and started his business. Still, he said he had not been very successful. His mind had not been in the business. It had been focused on how to fulfill the order of his spiritual master. Srila Prabhupada thought that by running his business, he would make money and be able to go to the West to fulfill Srila Bhaktisiddhanta's order. As it turned out, when he did go to the West, he went as a pauper without support. Then everything just started to happen in the most amazing way. It was, he said, all by the arrangement of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And though that experience, he had learned an important lesson. And through that experience, he had learned an important lesson that when one served the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one did not have to worry about money or anything. The Lord would make all the arrangements. If one served him sincerely, he would provide everything. Even as I was listening, I was aware of my own good fortune to be hearing about Srila Prabhupada's life story from his own mouth. Hare Krishna. Shubham, Prabhu can continue.
अभिषेक ब्रो ने भी अनम्यूट कर दो जा पड़ी है.
हरे कृष्ण प्रभु जी, मैं कंटिन्यू करता हूँ.
Yes, bro, yes, bro.
On the morning of the disappearance of Sripad Mahesh Pandit, one of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's most intimate associates, I noticed more activity than usual around Srila Prabhupada quarters. When when I asked what was happening, I learned that Prabhupada had accepted an invitation to attend the disappearance festival of Palpar, Mahesh Pandit's Sripat, place of residence about 50 kilometers away. Srila Prabhupada rode in his maroon ambassador, followed by a few carloads of leading devotees and myself. When we arrived, a beautiful kirtanas was going on. Srila Prabhupada was greeted with great honor and respect, and along with a few leading disciples taken to the stage, Prabhupada glorified Sri Mahesh Pandit, who, as an associate of Lord Chaitanya, had come from the spiritual sky to assist him in his mission. Led by Nityanand Prabhu, he and other devotees distributed Krishna Bhakti throughout Bengal, and through the efforts of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, all of India had been inundated with pure devotion to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Srila Prabhupada pointed out that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had predicted that the Krishna consciousness movement would spread all over the world to every town and village. And even if it might have once sounded like an impossible prediction, it was now becoming a reality. Prabhupada pointed to his Western disciples on the stage and declared that Mahaprabhu's prediction could never go in vain. He was the supreme personality of Godhead, and his words were the absolute truth. Srila Prabhupada praised his American and European disciples for their dedication and thanked them for helping him fulfill the divine prediction. Then he reminded the Indians in attendance about Mahaprabhu's instructions that all Indians, irrespective of caste, creed, or religion, should make their lives successful by distributing Krishna consciousness throughout the world. He quoted from Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, भारत भूमि ते हैला मनुष्य जन्म यारा जन्म सार्थक करी जन मनुष्य जन ओके जन्म सार्थक करी कर पर उपकारा. Uh, those who are born in India should make their life successful by becoming Krishna conscious and then benefit others. And the best way to benefit others, he said, was by giving them Krishna consciousness. He quoted another verse from the Chaitanya Charitamrita. Yara dekhe tara kahe kaha Krishna updesa amara agyana guru ban tar ei desa. Whoever you meet, instruct him about Krishna. Thus, on my order, becoming a spiritual master and deliver everyone in this world. Srila Prabhupada emphasized that every Indian should take up that responsibility. It was what Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, wanted. One might feel unqualified to take up such an important responsibility, but there was no need to feel that way. Just as there were various types of birds, some like sparrows that flew around a courtyard, some that flew from one country to another, and others that flew from one continent to another. People were different too. Each people uh, could preach according to his ability. Some could preach to his friends and neighbors, while other could go from one country to another. The whole world needed Krishna consciousness, and Indians had the solemn responsibility to go out and give it to everyone. Srila Prabhupada declared that he was just one Indian who went out of India and spread Krishna consciousness all over the world. Uh, what what would happen if all the Indians took up that responsibility? He asked. No one can even imagine. हरे कृष्णा. शुभम प्रभु आप कंटिन्यू कर सकते हैं.
Hare Krishna. जी ब्रो मैं करता हूँ कंटिन्यू. Most of the people in the audience were simple villagers In their remotest dreams, they did not imagine going abroad, what to speak of preaching the message of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. But Srila Prabhupada was urging even them. This spiritual message of India is the real wealth of India, and the entire world is waiting to receive it. If the Indians don't do it, then who will? So many Indians have gone to America to take advantage of her material prosperity and become rich. But I didn't go there to beg from them. I went there to offer them something they never had, the greatest spiritual wealth. Prabhupada invited the crowd to join ISKCON and become engaged in fulfilling Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's spiritual mission. Unfortunately, no one responded to his invitation. The following week, Kalyan Das, a second initiated Bengali devotee who lived outside the temple and worked as an insurance agent and school teacher, came to Mayapur to see Srila Prabhupada. Prabhupada asked him about his spiritual life and also inquired about his wife and children. It was a sweet, warm exchange. Then Kalyan asked Srila Prabhupada, "What is my Suddha? Uh, what is my Suddha
Siddha
Swarupa?"
Swarup. Siddha Swarupa.
Siddha Swarup, Chipu. Siddha Swarup. What he wanted to know was his spiritual identity. This idea to learn one's spiritual identity at the time of initiation was a sahajiya or deviant practice, and Sri Prabhupada's mood changed immediately. He became extremely angry, and with his voice roaring and his lips quivering, he repeated, "You rascal, your Siddha Swarup, you rascal, your Siddha Swarup." Finally, when he had cooled down, but with his voice still raised, he told Kalyan, "Don't worry about your Siddha Swarup. When you become qualified, I will personally come and reveal it to you." I was surprised by Sri Prabhupada's vehement reply, but I could also see two things clearly. The first was that as devotees, we did not have to worry about our spiritual identity. We simply had to be engaged in devotional service. The rest would happen automatically, and our spiritual identity would be revealed by the mercy of Guru and Krishna. The second was that Prabhupada would always be there for us. He would take us back to Godhead. It was just a matter of our becoming qualified. Kalyan was very apologetic and begged Srila Prabhupada forgiveness. After a moment, Prabhupada regained his natural serene and merciful mood and explained to Kalyan that when both the Guru and disciple were qualified, the Guru might reveal the disciple's spiritual identity. If, however, either tried to proceed improperly, it could not only create chaos but also destroy the spiritual life of both. Soon after the Gaur Purnima festival, Srila Prabhupada was scheduled to go to Bombay. The devotees there had organized a week-long program for him at Cross Madden in the heart of the city. There was some discussion about whether or not I would accompany him. The temple management wanted me to stay since I was involved in so many branches of service. Furthermore, I was the only educated Indian devotee in Mayapur, so I often had to deal with government officials and other important people. Bhavanand Maharaj in particular dependent on me. And just 2 days before Prabhupada's departure, he came and told me that although I had been included in the Bombay team, I should stay in Mayapur. My heart sank, but I could not protest. Maharaj had done so much for me, and I was beyond grateful that he had introduced me to Srila Prabhupada, thus helping me get the service of translating Prabhupada's books. which had given me the opportunity to be with Prabhupada practically all the time. Understanding what I was feeling, Maharaj explained how service to the spiritual master in separation was superior to personal service in his physical presence. Still, I could not shake the heavy feeling from my heart. The next day, I was sitting in front of Sri Prabhupada in his room as he chanted on his beads. All of a sudden, he looked up at me and asked, "Are not you coming with me to Bombay?" I had been waiting for just this opportunity and blurted out, "No, Sri Prabhupada, Bhavanand Maharaj wants me to stay in Mayapur. He told me that service to the spiritual master in separation is superior to personal service." Cyril Prabhupada replied, "I think when your spiritual master wants you to serve him personally, you should do that. Then should I come with you?" I asked. "Do you want me to come with you?" I could hardly contain myself. "Yes," he stated. I ran to Bhavanand Maharaj and told him what Prabhupada had said. "If Srila Prabhupada wants," he replied, "then of course you have to go with him. And he wants you to pay for my fare also," I joked. "Sure," he said with a smile. I felt. Hare Krishna. I think chapter has ended.
जय शिल प्रभुपाद की जय।
कृष्ण प्रभु जय श्री प्रभुपाद की जय।
ठीक है, कल पढ़ेंगे। अच्छा हाँ, कल से हो सकता है कि मेरा एक सेमिनार शुरू होगा हरिनाम चिंतामणि पे 7 बजे से 7:10 से, पता नहीं, तो मैं बता दूंगा, है ना, कैसा होगा, क्या करेंगे, है ना। तो इन केस अगर ऐसा होता तो फिर आप लोग कंटिन्यू कर सकते हो, है ना। ठीक है,
जी प्रभु।
हरे कृष्ण,
कृष्ण।
प्रभुपाद की जय।
जय।
जय